Hello and welcome. There's a lot of stuff on this table, but we're going to primarily focus on this, the GG&G single piece 30mm QD mount. They do offer this in different sizes, heights, and the lot, even non-QD, if you so opted for that, but we're going to be focusing our attention on this particular mount. Why this particular mount? Well, I'm doing a little project for myself involving taking two rifles and combining them into one because I have some time, money, and space restraints that are going to be coming up very soon, and the last thing I want to do is just have way too much stuff. I gotta dense it down. So I'm going to be taking my Precision 223 Howa mini action that I had built, and I'm going to be utilizing my Ruger American Wrench right here to do the job of both a short compact 1-4 topped fast carbine and a semi-precision medium engagement rifle. So in order to do that, I need some sort of QD mount, or at least I would prefer some sort of QD mount. Enter this GG&G. Why this one and not something like this, my ADM Recon? Height. It's very simple. I was running these 1-inch tall Vortex rings, and they were fantastic. I haven't reviewed these, but they're very, very good and very lightweight. And they're 1-inch from the top of the pick to the dead center of the optic, and these are perfect for how I have my rifle set up. Everything about it's super comfortable and just very easy to get behind. ADMs are like 1.1 inches. Actually, I think it's a little bit more than 1.1 inches taller than that, which I didn't want. 1/8 of an inch really does make a lot of difference. The GG&G is 1 inch and about 1/16, so it's right in between those two. But more so than that, this is also a little bit lighter than the ADM. Price-wise, it's a little bit cheaper, especially if you find one of these used, which is exactly what I found this thing for. I paid like $140 for this, I think, and I was very excited when I did, because these are about $208 brand new, whereas the ADMs are right around the same, so these technically are, going up against one another. But this offers some pretty interesting features that might actually give the ADM a run for its money. First thing we're going to talk about is the weight, and the weight is a big thing for me. Even though I'm going from something that weighs, as you can see, sub 7 ounces, it's 6.7 ounces. BTW FYI, the non-QD version weighs 1 ounce lighter and costs $50 less. The ADM is a full ounce heavier, but why not just stick with something even like these loopholes, which are solid steel, they are QD, and they do return to zero very well. And guess what? They're almost 2 ounces lighter. The reason is I really, really like one-piece mounts. I think they look better, I think they function a little better, and it gives me a little bit more peace of mind knowing that I don't have to worry about anything really flexing on a bad rail or whatnot. I feel these are a lot more rigid setup, and besides, I think they look really, really badass. And you know what? That's where we're going to start looking at the mount. It looks really, really cool, and the first thing you might notice is this gigantic single locking lever on the side. Every other QD mount, with the exception of the Bobro that I've gotten in here, has been 2 levers. I actually have a Bobro still on the shelf to compare it to, and the reason why I want to compare it is, you remember how small this little footprint is here, right? This little lock. Even on the ADMs, these are about 1 inch long. They're a really good size. They're nice and sturdy. On the GG&G, look at how big that lever is, that locking leg on that side. Yeah, technically, the ADM has a larger footprint of locking surfaces, but that's a nice big chunky lock right there in the middle, as opposed to this Bobro, which has that little piece right there. Now, one criticism about this GG&G, I wish these weren't rounded, because I always feel that if this does start to slide, this being rounded is going to start messing up with your pick rail, whereas something like the ADM does have the squared shanks in there. That feels to me like it's going to lock up a lot better on a pick rail. But with this, I think it's going to be mostly okay. You can see just how much pressure this thing actually puts on a pick rail from the witness marks right there under the claw. It's frankly impressive. And you don't really think about it, but you could put a lot of leverage on this thing as opposed to this. The leg is literally twice as long. So you're putting probably the exact same amount of force on this as you would with this, but in a slightly lighter package. But the ergonomics of this, I feel, have so far been a little bit more improved even than the ADMs. Let me explain. So I praise the ADM Recon. It's a very good mount. and I've had no real issues with it, except for every once in a while, especially on my recording rig, when I can't really get under here all too well to disengage these locks when they're really tight. Right now, this isn't that tight, but if we were to tighten this up a little bit and you put a little bit too much force on this, it's almost impossible to try to disengage, especially if you have a big tube in the middle and, you know, a big parallax adjustment right here. You can't get your finger in there to get over it, and sometimes getting under it's going to be a little bit tricky depending on what action you have. So you're forced to sometimes get in there and really try to wrench this thing down. And in the back, the same thing. You're going to have the rear eyepiece here or the front objective, so you can't really come on this side and get behind it. And guess what? You can't get on top of it. There's no room to really wiggle your finger in there. And this is with 30mm tubes. If it was a 34, it'd be even more challenging. So you have to come underneath here, which, yeah, you know, that's why they have these little paddles here, but it doesn't mean that it's going to give you more clearance with your action. And I've run into that problem a couple of times. The GG&G is very simple. Put it on, slide forward, and you'll lock this thing down. Now, is there any sort of problem with this? This does protrude a little bit more than the ADM locks, and that's going to be my benchmark as a comparison. But, you know, everything's going to be a little bit different. But look, you come over here, and you pull this back. Now, this is under a lot of tension, but that just means that it's not going to go anywhere. With my finger here from the top, look where it is. Nothing's going to be in this area to block this. So I don't have to worry as much as I do with these little levers on this GG&G. Finger right here, and you pull back. Comes right off. Fantastic. Now, I did say that this thing does protrude a little bit farther on the side, if you look right there, and I've already measured it, it's a 1/2 inch. If you are worried about having a very slim profile to your rifle, this might not be the mount for you. But other than that, it's fantastic. Locks up very tight, and one thing you have to do, which I didn't even see it in any instruction booklet, one thing you have to do, there's an Allen key in there, you have to torque that down to 15 inch-pounds. I was told that by one of my Patreon providers because I couldn't find the instruction booklet for this thing online anywhere. So that's one thing you have to do, but guess what? It's a very repeatable lockup, and we're going to find out how repeatable it is very soon. But just to finish going over this thing real quick, I know this video is going to be long, I apologize. Let's unscrew the cap and see what we got. Now, these screws are a lot smaller than something that you would find on the ADM Recon. You can clearly see the size of the head right there is significantly different, and the thread pitch, yeah, this slides inside those threads. It is smaller, but one thing you only find on certain mounts so far, like the LaRue, is stainless steel thread inserts in the body. So you don't have to worry about stripping out the threads in the base. And that's great because you can have a smaller screw, put the exact same amount of torque on it that you would need for a larger screw, and not have to worry about pulling out while saving weight. Very cool. Now, one interesting thing to note is this sort of wearing in here. I don't know if the guy or the previous owner tried lapping this. I really don't know. It looks a little funky, but it's smooth. Your nail catches on a little bit, but I've had optics mounted in this, and it hasn't given me any issues as far as mounting goes or damaging the tube of the optic. But the same sort of thing can be noticed under the cap. You see it? Now, again, this is a used optic. I'm sure if this is brand new, that wouldn't be the case. I don't know if it's just a wear problem or if the previous owner, like I said, tried lapping this, which is, I think, what the case could have been. But even if he did lap it, the marks on this are actually fairly consistent. So I wouldn't be too worried about this thing being out of trueness. But you know what? Enough talking about this thing. Let me mount an optic in this and see how well it returns to zero. Alrighty, we have the GG&G mount, and we have the Meopta Optica 6-3-18, one of my favorite all-time MPVOs. As you can see clearly, we have a phenomenal image, but we're not here to talk about this optic that I love so much. We're here to talk about this mount, because this mount has great potential for myself. Anyway, I'm going to wiggle the crap out of this, and you're going to see it returns to zero. Fine, so there's no play whatsoever in the system as itself. Bam! All right, so talk about this optic a little more. I've been running this a lot more on my Ruger American Ranch that I did my Woodland Brutality in. And this is, I wish this reticle was in most LPVOs because it's just fantastic. Really bright center dot and those, Okay, anyway, big lever on this thing. We're gonna disengage that, as you can see. I'm gonna remove it completely, throw it back on, push forward with a little bit of pressure, and lock it down. We're perfect. Absolutely perfect. We're gonna do this one more time. Push forward, engage the lock. We are absolutely perfect. You know what? Let's just go for 3 in a row. It's easy and fast enough with this mount. Unlike a lot of other mounts that have 2 little things that you can't really get to, this thing allows for so much room and clearance around it. Oh, by the way, yeah, it's perfect. I wasn't too sure how I was going to like this mount, but the more I use it, the more I play with it, the more I like it, because it's just so easy to just take on and off. You don't have to worry about twisting anything. Okay, yeah, we got Connect 4. Basically perfect. What more do you want? Color me impressed. You get a very lightweight mount, really good features. I like this gigantic lever. I like the thread certs for the caps. This way you don't have to worry about stripping anything out. The only thing I would like to see are these be squared. That's the only thing. Everything else about this, it just plain old works. And you're getting an American-made, really high-quality mount that, as you've seen, returns to zero as good as anything else. Right up there with the best. And I'm very pleased with this so far. As far as the nail test, which I know I didn't do earlier, you can see it clearly does get marked up, but wipes off fairly well. The anodizing on this thing is very nice, with the exception of whatever we saw inside the tubes earlier. I'm sorry, inside the mount for the tubes earlier. But like I said, I had my Miopta Optica 6 mounted in there, and there's no issues to the tubes whatsoever. This thing has been in a ton of different mounts, but this thing's probably going to find a permanent home inside one of these mounts alongside my P4XI for this thing. Because if you haven't seen my video of me doing Woodland Brutality, this rifle with this optic is a perfect combination. But this rifle with this optic and a couple of other tweaks to this, I think are also going to be a perfect combination for a more, let's say, intermediate range precision rifle. And 3 to 18 on a 223 out to 500 yards for precision should be absolutely no question, especially with the 69 or 77 grain ammo I'm going to be running through this thing. So there you have it. This is a phenomenal mount. If you're curious about one of these, I would absolutely get it, as long as you don't mind how far this protrudes. Oh, you know what? That's why I wanted to show you. That's why I pulled the gun out. As far as how this actually looks on the gun, I think it looks perfectly fine. Yeah, would I like to see this be a little bit closer to the body? Yes, but guess what? If you have, let's say, a Miopta Optica 6 on top, you can clearly see how much more the parallax and illumination controls are going to cover it, so it doesn't really matter. The same thing for the P4XI. The illumination controls stick out basically the same distance, if not a touch farther, than that locking cam. So it's a non-issue for me, and hopefully be a non-issue for you. But regardless to that fact, this thing is a pretty sweet mount, and whoa, I'm dropping fucking everything. It will not be the only one I'm going to be getting. I got to get at least one more for this combination, and if I ever need another one, without a question or shadow of doubt. This is a very long video. I apologize, but this is a very cool mount, and I had a lot to say about it. Thank you all very much for watching, and as always, see you again next time.
And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to help support the channel but don't want to join my Patreon, I completely understand. But you can help by using the affiliate links in the description below. Thanks again for watching.